Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to the A to Z podcast. Zach Jackson, Andre Knott, A to Z podcast.com, Facebook.com/A to Z podcast, all that fancy stuff. Thanks to you guys for helping this thing grow. Thanks to our sponsors, the Honeymoon Grill, Cleveland Scene, and American Fireworks, AmericanFireworks.com. Dre, a very special weekend here in Northeast Ohio, as we've talked about, and we were recording this before the golf tournament starts, but it's Hall of Fame weekend.
Yes.
The golf tournament's going away. The Hall of Fame never is. They're in the midst of groundbreaking, revolutionary project.
The golf tournament. Did I get an email today about the senior tournament?
Yeah, next year it's going to be a senior major.
Yeah.
And guess what? Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah. Unfortunately, until time.
Like, okay, John Daly's in Akron. Cool, come party with us.
Is John Daly is a senior? Is that a senior tour?
Yeah, he's still alive.
His liver is
upset of the century. Yeah. 2 upsets. UMBC over Virginia, and John Daly makes it to 50.
As Tito says, there's a lot of people that bet against the over. Same with John Daly.
No, that's true. We didn't really talk about this the other day when we talked about some things. We are recording this, as I mentioned before it starts. We have a guest we wanted to do. The events of Wednesday, both in Berea, but more specifically with what came out in Columbus, kind of dictated this. But the Hall of Fame. You know, you're a huge football fan.
Yes.
Your dad was a huge football fan. You grew up rooting for the Cowboys, watching all of those guys over the last several years come in the Hall of Fame. We've been there together. We've been there separately, personally and professionally. It's an awesome weekend for the whole region. It's an awesome weekend for the NFL. It's all these things. There's two negatives on this year. One, T.O. being T.O. and trying to upstage the greatest of the game. And 2, Ray Lewis is a scumbag of a human being.
Yeah, well, wow. Can't disagree with you. Let me ask you this, because you bring that up. Because we were talking about this in Minnesota. Is the NFL making the right move by just almost ignoring T.O.? I thought they should almost, and this is just my opinion, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but I've kind of thought out loud that, even though T.O. is a shithead, and we all know that's nothing new, should they almost do him like a person that's passed away, where you do the 15 minutes, where you have someone talk about him, you do the video, and then you just move on?
No, I think they're going to include him in the group video, with no indivital acknowledgement because he chose not to come.
Okay.
So I think,
if that's what it is, that's fair.
I think that's what they plan to do, is just keep it moving.
And that's his fault.
It is.
It's a shame, honestly. And we all have our hang-ups on how we feel about certain things, and when we get into classes and don't get into classes, and who thinks we're great and who doesn't think we're great.
Exactly.
But at that point in time, that's one time to get over yourself. They've acknowledged.
Sure.
They've acknowledged that you're great.
Amen.
They've acknowledged it. They're acknowledging it.
Right. And I think a lot of people will tell you mistakes were made. For
sure.
And there was agendas held. That's obvious.
Well, you and I have this conversation. We have this conversation every single year when it comes to any Hall of Fame voting. It's imperfect. It's very imperfect. And I complain all the time about who gets to vote for it, how many people really see them. I think there should be more. I don't.
Two T's: transparency and turnover.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Those are the perfect T's. It's just like the baseball one just happened, and we're doing a game last week in Detroit, and Jim Thome was great and everything else, and I did this, and I don't try to go the opposite way all the time, but Alan Trammell goes in, and look, I'm 40, so I don't remember Lou Whitaker's whole career. I think he was a rookie 78.
Right.
The year I was
you had his baseball card,
but I had his baseball card. I knew his name. My dad was big on shortstops growing up, so I remembered Alan Trammell.
He had a bunch of short kids. Good for him.
Yes, I got another one coming. He's going to turn 2. I got the next Jose Ramirez right now.
He does kind of look like him. I saw him running around the yard out there.
He's going to be him too. Don't you worry. That's the plan. But Lou Whitaker was synonymous with Alan Trammell.
Sure.
And then we looked it up, and it was one of those things I brought up on air, not knowing. And then we looked it up, and his numbers were better. And I caught myself, and I was like, it's imperfect. And then there was an article in the Detroit Press where they're like, Lou Whitaker should get in the next couple of years. Yeah. And he was very great about it. He was like, man, I'm just glad. And I was glad I read that article before we talked about this. Because he goes, it's imperfect. He goes, when I get in, I get in. He goes, I'm just glad I'm acknowledged.
Sure. Just for clarification's sake before you guys, actually, yes, I know the baseball votes are revealed, but in football they're not. There's a committee. And I kind of respect that too, because it allows you, I think, to have an open and honest conversation.
Well, isn't it a shame that we have to cover it up to have an open and honest conversation? You're right. But
I think you raise a great point with that, too.
Isn't it amazing that's the only way you can get some people to be open and honest?
I think you raise a great point with that, too. Look, here's how I feel, and I'm glad you brought up baseball as a point of reference. You know what's the coolest thing to me about the Hall of Fame every year? And this is older. I was almost messed up and said mature, but more mature Zach talking.
Oh, snap.
Yes, it's about those guys, Dre, and their accomplishments, but it's about the guys that are already in that come back.
Absolutely.
And not everybody can make it every year, but they do. They try. And they're gathered there, and then they're being honored for their greatness and on-field greatness trumping whatever else, because everybody has issues.
Yes.
We've been over that.
And agendas.
Yes, all of those things. But that's who T.O. is dissing. Yes, he's dissing the city of Canton.
No doubt.
Yes, he's dissing the committee.
No doubt.
Yes, he's dissing the NFL.
No doubt.
But he is dissing all of those guys, 50 to 100 of them.
Yes. He's dissing his best teammates that he's ever had.
The guys who dedicated their lives and gave years off their lives to do this.
Right.
And T.O., me, is too big for them. So fuck him.
Yeah, fuck him. But I hope, and kids out there that are listening after that great segment right there, and I hope your dad lets you keep listening.
We didn't give the disclaimer. Now we got a whole bunch of people from Iowa listening for later. And from Massillon, but they know the F word.
I'll learn the F word up in Massillon. The thing is, this is another moment of T.O. being T.O., and it's unfortunate because this is the one time where, you know, the one thing, because, and this is going to go into Ray Lewis, because we don't got to talk about T.O. a ton. T.O. is who he is. He was a great player. He pissed off the best receiver ever. Like, think about that, what San Francisco was able to accomplish, and it's a little bit like what has happened at the quarterback position in Green Bay. To go from Jerry Rice to T.O., and in Jerry Rice's last game as a 49er, I think T.O. caught 19 passes and pissed off the world.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's unbelievable, but that just tells you a story. From the beginning to the end, he's always had to do it his way. So congrats. You're a Hall of Famer. We move on. Now, it's funny you bring up the Ray Lewis part of this because...
Well, let me stop you real quick, okay?
Okay.
We know in sports, right, you root for your guys and you root for the colors, right? I was in Pittsburgh the other night. Every team's black and gold. That's an awesome
thing. Black and yellow, black. Chris Archer already got a jersey.
You relate to those Cowboys teams and the Niners and the gold and the red that stands out and all of those things.
I'm not really happy with the owner right now.
Right, but yeah, no, he's always been an idiot. He's just
always
had a lot of money and had a lot of good players. The prevailing money in pro sports is green. The prevailing color is what I meant to say. And T.O.'s proof of that, right? Because one day he's dissing the star, the ultimate diss, and then he's playing for the Cowboys.
All about the green. Right. You're right. But, you know, as fans, though, it's funny because we've talked about Des Bryant. We've talked about the other receiver that probably will never play again, but we'll see. And it's amazing how, and it plays into Ray Lewis. This is great. It's like we planned this. If Ray Lewis played for the Cleveland Browns, and unfortunately, maybe people think of him differently, but I think most people across the country think of him the way you and I think of him. But it's amazing in Baltimore how there's people right now, as we are recording this, that are getting in their cars, bundling up, and they're coming to Canton, Ohio this weekend, and they're going to wear their 52s, and they're going to wear their purple shoes and their purple jerseys, and they're going to put on their bandana
and do their dances,
and they're going to do everybody's going to do their Ray dance, and it's amazing, and it tells you so much about where our country, and it's not just our country now. It's always been like this. With the right amount of money, with the right amount of prestige, with the right amount of whatever cachet, you can get away with murder. I hate saying it.
Well, you just said it there. Look, we don't know what the facts are. Only Ray and his posse know what happened that night.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to go full Akron on this because the guys that got killed were from Akron.
But,
you know, frankly,
being from Akron is hard not to.
Yeah, frankly, I was real young when it happened, and I haven't read up on the details in many years because what's done is done.
Right.
But the facts are laid out that 2 men got killed. That Ray Lewis was at worst a witness to it,
right,
and at best a witness to it, at worst a participant in it, and because of his name and prestige, got off with nothing.
And I think,
and then was allowed to go on and have this Hall of Fame career,
right. And was in the Super Bowl the next year, dancing away and forgetting about it. And the white suit is still the white suit. And we've made jokes, and I got to tell you, I'm actually off on Saturday, and I'm already having debates. Maybe I go see golf. Maybe, and I want to see, like, and all my boys, Mike.
I got some things you could do. We'll talk about those off the air.
That's not for the microphone.
Not when we're recording at your house anyway.
Yeah. By the way, we're on my deck. This is pretty cool to do this way, white clawing it to death. But my buddy, my old roommate, Mike's like, we got to go see Randy Moss go in the Hall of Fame. And when he originally said that, I was like, hell yeah. And not that Randy Moss was the best character in the world either, but Randy Moss goes all the way for you and I. It goes all the way back to Kent State. It goes about. I remember Huntington. I remember being at Marshall. I know his story. He's my same age.
Yes.
We've watched all of his, and it's funny because I've never had a bad thing really to say about Randy Moss. Like, I got that I play hard when I want to play hard. You know, straight cash, homie. All of his, like, things he did, I was always okay with because of this unbelievable athlete he was. And I got a good story.
Because when he wanted to do it, he did it like nobody else.
Yes. I got two good stories. One of them I've told, but we'll do them for our fireworks feature a little bit later on Randy Moss. And at first I was like, hell yeah. Maybe, I was like, I know how fun those Saturday nights could be. I know how terrible I'd be at my job on Sunday, but that's nor here nor there. And then I was like, I don't know if I really want to be there for that whole. I can't take a sermon from Ray Lewis.
Yeah.
I can do it at home or do it on the boat or do it somewhere where we can turn and do something else for 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could sit there live and I already did the Michael Irvin.
Let me ask you this. Does he get enough booze that it comes across on the TV?
Wow. Yes, but no.
I hope so.
Yes, but there's going to be enough Baltimore people there that are going to dance and shake and he's going to overcome it because he's going to use Jesus.
I would walk out.
I'm going to say something that some people won't like, and I can say this because I'm not super religious, but I believe he's going to use the crutch of Jesus to make people to blind.
It's got potential to be the worst speech in Hall of Fame history.
But he's going to use Jesus in his religion as his crutch.
Yes.
To blind people to the fact of what he was accused of. A real man, in my opinion, would stand up there. Like, I'll give Michael Irvin this because we sat through that and we sweated through that night. And Michael Irvin basically went up there and admitted that he was a shithead. He was a bad father. He let drugs and women control his life.
That was real.
It was real. Even if you didn't like Michael Irvin, you walked away and you tipped your hat to him, even though he made us sit out there for 48, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And hey, writers.
I think it just got done on Tuesday, actually.
And hey, writers, can I ask writers one thing on Twitter? Don't bitch about how long it takes. We all know it's going to. Like, that's become like one of the things now.
Sure.
So there's going to be a guy that goes 30 minutes too long, and there's going to be a guy that goes 10 minutes too short. Just get over it. You're there for the long haul.
Right.
But I'm telling you, Ray Lewis is going to go up there and do a sermon. And to me, if you're going to do a true sermon and you're going to truly let your soul be seen, go up there and be honest and apologize to those two families. And say, I wish at the time, because he can't, it's no double jeopardy. Hell, OJ skated. You could skate. OJ could show up now. Think about that shit.
He could.
Think about that.
How about that?
OJ should show up in a Buffalo Bills jersey and say, what's up, y'all?
OJ could have breakfast at the Honeymoon Grill this Saturday.
Yes, he might. With a white Bronco.
Get the Western Omelet, homie.
Yeah, man. Oh, shit. We could have OJ and Tiger in the same town at the same motherfucking time. Tupac may be alive. Tupac may be alive. But seriously, and I'm saying this, and if you're a Ray Lewis fan, God bless you, but you're wrong. Ray Lewis, the only how I can respect you if you walk off there or that podium on Saturday and you apologize at least to those families and say, I wish I was more mature at that time, that I handled that situation differently.
Yeah.
At least say that.
Got a feeling that when we podcast next week, even though we'll be talking about more current events, that might come up.
Mm-hmm.
It might. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It's a real interesting time in sports. It's a real interesting time in the sports world, the sports culture.
Well, sports is a microcosm of the real world, and we're dealing with a lot of real.
And without
stuff.
even knowing, you just nailed another transition because we're going to have Kyle Kempt on here in a minute, and not just because of his improbable underdog story that he's going to tell us about, but some of the things he's been through are a microcosm of the real world. Some of the people he's met, the things he's done, the ups and downs. I'm going to let Kyle tell his story. But Kyle moved here in high school from the West Coast. He went to Massillon, one of the most storied programs that there is. He started there for nearly 3 full seasons, and he's been on a college journey ever since, a college journey that most people had given up on. Last year, what was supposed to be his senior year, he was a walk-on at Iowa State. He was never playing. The franchise QB ended up off the team. Kyle ended up making his first college start against Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma. Iowa State won the game as a 31-point underdog. They went on to win the Liberty Bowl, which if you know anything about college football, Iowa State winning that is equivalent to a lot of programs winning 2 or 3 national titles.
Right.
He's just a great kid. And it's a great story, and I know him. And as we kind of switch into football mode, not talking Browns, Buckeyes, Urban, Hall of Fame, whatever, I wanted to make sure we had Kyle on. He's kind of on borrowed time, let's be honest. He got the 6th year from the NCAA. He never expected to be here. But he's a kid who's worked his ass off to get here and will work his ass off to stay here. Whether he gets hurt, whether he gets benched, or whether he leads them to double-digit wins this year, and Matt Campbell gets the Ohio State job. I shouldn't say that out loud.
We're not talking about that one. This one.
But anyway, again, we are going to dial up Kyle, who I've known for several years, who I've rooted for. Unbiased journalist Zach is out the window. Fan Zach, but he's a good person, and he is seen some things. His story needs to be heard. So give us 1 second, and we are going to dial up the starting quarterback of the Iowa State Cyclones.
Zach's about to hit some buttons.
Kyle Kempt. All right, as promised, we have Iowa State quarterback Kyle Kempt on the line. And Dre, as I was saying before, we got cut off, and sometimes it's hard for me to remember what day it is, let alone what I was saying. Normally, we'd have a guest on, and I'd say, hey, if you're not familiar with such and such person, Google them. We're going to kind of dig in. But I think Kyle's story is so good on many levels, on a football level,
sure.
On an underdog level, on a persistence level, that I just kind of want to go through it. So, Kyle, first of all, welcome to A to Z, and we're curious where coming on this podcast ranks on your career achievement list.
Well, if Oklahoma was an achievement, career achievement, I'd say it was 2, and coming on your show is probably 1.
Damn Baker Mayfield, he couldn't beat you.
As we go through your story, and we appreciate you coming on, the perseverance. Where does this come from? Like, because here, I'll give you my story quickly, and my story is very boring, and nobody cares about it. And if they listen to this podcast, they know it. I was pretty good. Went to St. V, played football, got a scholarship to Kent State, and in 6 weeks of playing at Kent State, I realized I wasn't going pro. I was real short. I was fast, and we sucked. And I'm not a quitter, Kyle, but I realized that like maybe I should try something else. And I will always regret it a little bit. My life's turned out pretty well. But I didn't have whatever you have to keep sticking with it. What has made you stick with it and believe in yourself?
I'd say just having a great support system, being raised with a great work ethic and having a great sense of perseverance too, and just loving the game also is really what's taken me through this.
All right, Kyle, so let's go back to your freshman year of high school. You move across the country. Your dad gets a job. You guys lived in Oregon. Your dad gets a job in Stark County, buys a house in Stark County. So take us through the initial Massillon experience, one of the known name programs in high school football, and then to your initial recruitment.
Yeah, so freshman year of high school, I was in Aloha, Oregon, went to high school there. Heading into my sophomore year of high school, my dad took a job in Greene, Ohio at a company called Diebold. We ended up moving out to Ohio in between my freshman and sophomore year. Me and my dad lived in a hotel for the first 2 months while my mom and brother stayed behind. At that time, I was getting acclimated with the whole Massillon experience, just the people in the town. I was on a summer baseball team. I was doing summer football workouts. I really had to work very hard to kind of get in the favor of the people of the town and of my friends too. Just because that town's a very tight community. It's they kind of eat their own is the term you'll hear them say at times, but it's a very loving town too. So I came there, didn't start when I first showed up as a sophomore. One of my friends was starting quarterback at the time. Midway through the third game, I got my first snaps, and then started the next game at Mentor up there. I don't think Mitch Trubisky played that game. I don't think he was a starter, but that was kind of my first exposure to him. Went through the season. I think we were 7-4, lost to Toledo Whitmer in the playoffs in the first round. Next season was coached by a guy named Tom McDaniel. He was the offensive coordinator. Very famous Hall of Fame coach, McKinley coach. We ended up going 7-3 actually that year. Didn't win the McKinley game. Didn't make it to the playoff. Next year we had a new offensive coordinator change. Bedry Bardwell came in. Phenomenal guy, did a phenomenal job coaching me. We went 11-2 and then lost in the third round of the playoffs to Toledo Whitmer. But at the time when I was a sophomore, my first offer came from Toledo. When Coach Beckman was there, Coach Campbell was the offensive coordinator. When Beckman left, that offer was still there. And I got recruited, I'd say pretty heavily in my junior year because that's typically when that happens. And then I'd throw this in, like my best year was my senior year by far. So I guess a lot of teams were going off the junior tape. But at the time I was recruited pretty heavily by West Virginia, which Coach Holgerson's still there. Indiana when Coach Wilson was there and Kevin Wilson was there, and Cincinnati when Butch Jones was there. And then in April, I'd say April 2012, I committed to the University of Cincinnati. I liked what Coach Jones was preaching at the time. I liked their team. I kind of wanted to stay in Ohio. It was a close place for me. Just because at the time too, I was starting to be really connected to the area. I did enjoy Stark County. I did enjoy the whole state of Ohio. So heading into my senior year is when I was committed to the University of Cincinnati at the time, and that was before kind of all the madness picked up.
So you wanted to stay in Ohio.
Wait, let me ask this.
But you ended up back in Oregon.
Wait. What did you know about Massillon football before you came? And how true was it after you lived it?
Well, I didn't know anything until my mom showed me the movie Go Tigers. And I'd say the truth of the matter is they really love their football, and that is extremely true. And while things have changed since 2001, you still get the same kind of commitment from the town, really from the kids too. They do take it very serious. That whole persona is very true. I'd say maybe some of the traditions that used to be there back in the day have died out, but the tradition and the bond over the sport of football will never fade in that town.
All right, so you want to stay in Ohio, but Butch Jones leaves, and you end up back in Oregon. So take us to step 2 of this 19-step process.
Yeah, so go through senior year of football. It's getting to that time where the coaching carousel for football is starting to get some momentum. So I get a call from Coach Jones in, I think, December, because his name's flying up for, like, Colorado, I think was the one at the time, and he got me on the phone and said, I'm not taking any of the jobs. I'm staying in Cincinnati, which is like, it's just the typical what coaches say to all the recruits when they're
like
going
when
through
your
that
girlfriend
process.
says she don't like nobody else. We got you.
Yeah. Yes. So he takes a job at Tennessee at the time, and I'm thinking, okay, cool, I'm going to go to Tennessee. Well, I didn't hear a single word from them. I never heard from him again. I don't think I've talked to him ever since. And then Coach Tupperville came into Cincinnati. There's a lot of misconception, I think, about how that process went down. I was just trying to kind of have open options. I wasn't trying to decommit, but at the same time, I was like trying to prepare myself in case they were trying to not honor my scholarship. So I was like trying to look around, but honor them at the same time, because they haven't even reached out to me in the first place. So they end up reaching out to me and saying, your scholarship isn't honored here. We're having another kid come here, and kind of the bottom falls out. So I ended up taking 3 visits, one to UConn because the receivers coach that was with Butch at the time went to UConn. I think it was OC there for a little bit. Took a visit to Toledo because of Coach Campbell and what he was selling. I took a visit to Oregon State also because of my ties to Oregon. My brother played at University of Oregon. We knew kind of the Oregon State coaching staff for a long time too. So ended up taking my official out there, committed out there. While I was out there, it just seemed like the best place for me at the time, I guess. Looking back, I loved Coach Campbell, what he was doing at Toledo, but I just never felt like he was going to be there just because he was a good coach. I never felt like he was going to be there while I was playing for him. And then I signed my letter of intent, and then I ended up out at Corvallis in the summer of 2013.
So you go back to Oregon, everything's good, you're going to redshirt a year, wait your turn, and see where you fit. Then the coach gets fired again. So take us to the next step.
Yeah, so the guy who brought me in, the offensive coordinator, Danny Langsdorf, the first fall was great. Everything was going, according to plan. He takes the quarterback job for the New York Giants after that season. So we get a new offensive coordinator. This is around the time when, I think we had a lot of talent on the team, but we went 6-6, and we ended up finishing 7-6. So it was kind of if you're around Corvallis, so you'd understand it. Coach Riley's been around there for a while. He's very well liked, but I think people in Corvallis were really trying to see if they could do something better. So that 2014 season was kind of the bottom basically fell out for, I think, everybody. I still like Coach Riley a lot. It just wasn't a match made in heaven for both sides. We didn't have a very good year. He ended up leaving and going to Nebraska. He had a team meeting, I think, a week after the season ended, and half of us were there because it was a random 8 a.m. team meeting. And our off week, obviously guys were sleeping. He takes a job in Nebraska, and we have no coach at the time. And then by that time, I was probably 5th string on the depth chart. I think a 4th string on the depth chart at the end of that season. So I wasn't sure what my future was even holding at that time too. So I went home and we hired a coach named Gary Anderson, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into there. So came back and went through that process. There are 7 of us now on the depth chart for quarterbacks. they told us, okay, we're going to go through 3 practices of spring ball, and we're basically going to cut 4 of you guys off. So we went through 3 practices. They cut 4 of us off. Me, Luke Del Rio, who played at Florida a little bit, and Marcus McMarion, who is Fresno State starter still, and then another guy that was a walk-on who just stayed and played on the basketball team there. But after 3 practices, all of us transferred away pretty quickly.
Wow. Kyle, off of this, I got to ask this question, and I'm going to have an ending to this at the end of this. How many offenses have you played under since you left Massillon at 18 years old?
Well, so first year, how many offensive coordinators, I'd say?
Well, how many systems or coordinators, however you want to dictate it?
Well, coordinators, 2013 I had Coach Langsdorff. 2014 I had Jason Garrett's brother, John Garrett. 2015 I was in JUCO, so new coordinator. 2016 and 2017 I had the same coordinator with Coach Campbell and Coach Manning, and then this year I have the same coordinator too, even though Coach Manning left. It's still Coach Campbell's system. So I've had a lot of turnover in coaches, especially quarterback coaches too, because I have a new quarterback coach this year. I had the same one for the past 2 years before that though, but I've had a lot of turnover in college with coaching.
So when the Browns draft you next year, you're ready. You
can run your own offense.
Yeah, I don't care who would take me. I'll be ready to adjust because I've had to learn everything from the pro style to the spread to I really wouldn't care if someone put me on the wing tee at this point.
No, I brought that up because it's going to help you. Like, we're joking about it, but whatever you do going forward, and obviously with what you've achieved already in life, you're going to be successful. I believe that. Whether it's playing, coaching, whatever you want to do, you're going to, because your story, to me, every kid needs to hear that's 15, 16. The recruiting, I'm glad you talked about recruiting and everything else. I just wish there was more honest stories out there about what happens, because everybody reads about the 5-star guy, but everybody talks about the guys that, like you said, you played your best your senior year of high school, and as we all know, sometimes if you're already, especially as a quarterback in special positions, you already kind of get pigeonholed into where you can or cannot go. Your story is going to make you prepared to do whatever is asked of you next, and hopefully it is. Is that what you want to do next? You want to be on somebody's NFL locker room this time next year?
Yeah, I'd love to ride that dream out as long as I have. Especially at this point, I've gone through it enough. Even last year, I was okay with not. I had to come to terms with, like, if I wasn't able to play ever last season, then I was going to take what I learned from football and apply it to my life. But now that I'm able to play, I'm just going to pursue that as long as I can.
So it doesn't work at Cincinnati. It doesn't work at Oregon State. And, for those of you guys who don't know, there's lots of reasons that guys go to JUCO, but 75%, rough estimate, is because they don't have the grades to go where they want to go. Kyle's never had a B in his life. He is 4-point everything kid, and you start looking at your options, and you choose JUCO. So where, why, and take us through that experience.
So I left Oregon State in April. We're on core systems there, so it made sense academically to not stay there and just – here's the thing. Indiana reached out to me, and they were like, we're going to have an offer for you. One of the coaches did. And I was like, cool, okay, I'm going to leave now. They kind of reeled that back pretty fast, and I kind of ran through – I don't want to say strung along, but it was kind of along that process. I took like 3 unofficials out there, and I mean, to be honest, I didn't have a film, so it's not like there wasn't really much for them to go off of in the first place, so I don't blame them, but it was just one of those things where it took a long time for that process, and then I was like, okay, well, you're going to have to walk on, and then at that point I was like, well, I might as well go JUCO, because at least at that point I can just play. I was just trying to play at this point. So I went to JUCO. I took 3 visits to some junior colleges, went to Coffeyville. I went to a small JUCO in middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, and then went to Hutch. I ended up going to Hutch and didn't play there. Basically, for those of you who don't know, like, you roster in JUCO. So they changed this rule where you can have out-of-state players on your JUCO roster, but when I was in it, you can only have 20 out-of-state players. So I wasn't born in Kansas, so I'm technically an out-of-state player. So I didn't make their roster cuts for who they wanted. They had 2 quarterbacks that were playing with them already. So I kind of didn't understand why they brought me along in the first place. It was kind of one of those deals where I probably didn't ask enough questions to figure out what I was getting myself into. So about as low as it gets, I'm a JUCO practice squad player. So I'm not doing anything. I'm just practicing for a junior college team. I'm not playing games. I'm going to class. That was what my whole fall of 2015 was. And my perspective is like, if I was able to make it through that and not quit, then there's no point of why I should be quitting anyways, because that gave me every reason to quit right then and there.
All right, so let's move on to Iowa State, because I got to tell you this, and you tell your story. I cover baseball. I don't know if you know what I do, and that doesn't matter. It's not important. I don't get to go to a lot of college football games anymore, and football is my love. And last year, I get to go to Akron and Iowa State. And I've got a 3-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter, and we're sitting up on the grassy knoll, and I remembered your name, and I freaked out because I saw you come on the field, and I was like, oh, my God, I can't believe he's still playing football. That's my side of this and why I was excited, because I got to tell my 3-year-old son, who looked at me like I had 3 heads because he didn't understand that at all. But it was a cool moment for me to see you back in Ohio playing. Lead us to how that ended up happening.
Yeah, that was my first action last year, actually.
Right.
So I walked on. So, okay, I go through JUCO. I'm not getting recruited by anybody. I took a visit to Arkansas for some reason, like a unofficial kind of during the season. At this point, it was like, okay, what am I going to do? So I just thought, well, I'm going to walk on anywhere. I might as well walk on where Coach Campbell is, because I have that relationship. I trust them, and I'm going to get a degree anyway. So let's see how this works out. Fortunately, my parents provided the means for me to do that, which I'm very thankful for. And they were really the big supporters in all this. But I went out to Toledo for a visit. They played Western Michigan. It was the year they were really good. I think they might have been up for one of the big bowl games for New Year's Eve. On the visit, it was Thanksgiving week. I saw him before the game. They lost to Western Michigan. Didn't see him after the game. The very next day, he takes the Iowa State job. I never heard of Iowa State before. I had no idea where it was. I mean, besides being in Iowa, but I didn't even know they were associated with the Big 12 either. So I was like, okay, I'm going to drive up from JUCO and basically take a visit and tell them I'm just going to walk on here. So go through that, end up walking on Iowa State. So come in the winter of 2016 when he first showed up, basically went through everything, all the really difficult. I think there's a lot of stuff that went on in the program that people don't know about, just how difficult it was to change the culture and turn things around to the way they are now. My very first collegiate action was the 4th game in. We played San Jose State. I got one series at the end of the game. That was my very first collegiate action. And then I got 2 snaps at the end of the Texas Tech game, I think in our 11th game. And then the next year, Jacob Park was a starter. I was basically, at the time, just had to make a decision. My parents kind of wanted me to drop down to D1AA to play. I didn't want to. I just wanted to stay at Iowa State, finish out my degree, but also, I had really close friends on the team, too. So I was like, no, just let me stay here. Let me finish this out. I don't want to quit on the team at all. So for me, it was, how can I help the team in any way possible? So whether it be, be a scout team player, which I was for 4.5 years, coach the young guys, help the quarterbacks. I pretty much did all of that. And then I got a little bit, we basically were competing for the backup job the whole winter, summer, and fall camp. No one was ever named the backup. Kind of went through season. The Akron game was the first game I got any action, actually. I got, I think 3 snaps. But that was almost, I wouldn't say a wake call, but it was also a reminder of, be ready because anything can happen. We go to the Texas game, obviously frustrating loss there. And then we get to the Oklahoma week. And on Tuesday, we find out our starter is suspended and that the job is pretty much open for competition. And I end up winning the competition that week to get a chance to be the starter in the game.
So this is the real powerful moment that people can relate to. Not just because it's recent, but so this was mid-September. I'm standing in the gravel parking lot at Akron waiting for you guys to show up. You had told me, and I knew your dad before I knew you. So you come and you talk to me for a second, you give your dad a hug, and you look at us and you say, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and who can blame you after 4.5 years on the scout team, you say, I might get in today. Because you knew you guys would probably blow out Akron if you showed up and played your game.
But Akron played them tight for
a tight. But then they pulled away, and you got in to hand off the ball. And as you mentioned, how awesome. And then 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, you're the starter. You go to Oklahoma. You're a 31-point underdog against a team that made the playoff and a guy that won the Heisman. And why don't you tell people how that game went?
Yeah, so when we had a good game plan going into that game.
You sound just like Coach Campbell. Yeah, we had a good game plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, only degenerates listen to our podcast. You can let it loose a little bit, man.
I mean, what were your emotions that week, Kyle, honestly? Because you had waited and waited and waited, and you never doubted yourself, but you had never done it.
It's hard to imagine those emotions that week because I really wasn't. It was excitement. It was kind of. I just tried to keep it as normal as possible. As hard as that, as cliche as it sounds, as Coach Campbell as it sounds, it's very much just how it was. I wasn't going. I just felt ready. That was kind of the thing. I had guys in the offense I could trust. I basically just put my entire trust in all of them, and it was one of those things where like, okay, nobody's gonna give us a chance. We have nothing to lose at all. We're gonna play football, a real football game since, again, meaningful action since high school. So, I was more so excited just playing again, honestly. And again, we had nothing to lose. So it was just for me, it was just odd how normal it felt. It didn't feel like it was a shock. It just felt like, this feels like a normal week for me.
So you win the game. First that night.
Wait a minute. You said it was a normal night for you. Wait. My job as a reporter, I gotta ask the hard hitting question. How the hell is that just normal, man? You've been clawing and fighting for this your whole entire life. There had to be a moment where, and I know you're a team guy, you're a quarterback, you're a leader. You're well, obviously schooled, but you had to have a moment at some point in time, whether it's to a friend, a girlfriend, your brother. Where you let out a scream and just and excuse my language for people out there. I'll use the best language I can. I would say the F word, but I'd say you had to have a hell yeah moment of, thank God I finally have proven I can do this.
Probably after the game, like when we're on the field, was probably as close as it gets. But even still, I was like, okay, we won this game. We got next week now. Like it's ingrained in my brain. Like I even have a hard time letting myself enjoy stuff like that. And I was also worried about, okay, I'm not going to let this game just define me. It was kind of all these things. I really just wanted to move on from that game as fast as possible. But like every time I look back at it, it gets even sweeter when you think about it. And it's one of those things that at the end of my career, I'm like, I would really want to enjoy that. Because I want that to be a point where we can look back and say, not just for me, but like as a program, that we really turned things around there.
So more wins followed, a couple losses. You guys won the bowl game, but your 5 years are up, so you had to appeal. And even though I think you felt optimistic, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't know. So Kyle, in the winter months, tell us about the sense of nervousness mixing with the sense of accomplishment. Like if it was over, you went out on top, but you've earned this chance from Massillon to Oregon to Hutchinson, fucking Kansas, wherever that is, to get another shot. So tell us about those emotions.
Yeah, I didn't even think I was going to get it, honestly. My dad was the one who was optimistic. He's like, you're going to get this. I'm like, there's no way in hell. Like, I've never heard of this before. You looked up the rule anyways. So just the winter was kind of annoying, that first part, because I was trying to be like half college student, half, staying ready to. I was kind of doing some NFL prep, but at the same time, if I didn't get it, I wasn't going to try and go to the NFL. I would just rather finish school. And the NCAA kept telling me, oh, you're going to know this week, and then just kept being pushed back. So finally, when they told me, I was so excited. I pretty much freaked out when I found out. that was a really exciting moment for me. I was probably more excited than I was after the damn Oklahoma game, just because I got to come back, get another year with these guys. That was really a great moment for me. But I really didn't think I was going to get it. I still don't really understand how I did, but that's not a question for me.
It's all right. Going forward, you're here. You've gone over all these hurdles. Who are the Cyclones this year? And now that you guys people know who you are. You guys became that team last year after the big win. That analysts were talking about them on that TV show on ESPN on Saturday mornings. Guys know your strengths, your weaknesses. They know your plays. You're not gonna walk in anywhere and surprise anybody this year. You know that.
No.
So who are you guys, and what are your expectations going forward?
Well, I will be the cliche Coach Campbell just because I am like that. But I just think, we're a team that we've kind of found out that we can play with anybody. I think that was probably the most important thing. We're going to return a really good defense. We're going to have, we got a very talented backfield with David. I got a bunch of talented guys around me. With the receivers, the tight end, the offensive line is going to be good this year. Expectation-wise, I just expect us to be ready to play the first game. I think the biggest thing for us is as long as we keep everything within ourselves and continue to play within ourselves and make it simple and do our jobs, we know that every game we can, when it comes down to the fourth quarter, we have experience. We had a lot of those close games. We won some last one. We can continue to turn those to more wins. I think, we're in line for a good season. But at the end of the day, all the talk doesn't matter. We're about to go into camp tomorrow. All the guys are really excited. We just have to understand that it's a long process. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And then we have to we have to remember what got us here. We were 3-9 years ago, and we had to learn a lot of those hard lessons. And we really have to build upon what we learned last year to take the next step.
Yeah, I think people don't understand unless they know. Just to have bowl practices at Iowa State's a big deal, right? Just to play on TV is a big deal, and you guys have done that. So that being said, Coach Campbell Jr., where was the line between you running in the huddle and just being new at this, and now you can say, hey, I've led this team. I need to lead this team. Like if I need to yell at somebody, if I need to grab somebody, if I need to give my input. Like when did that kind of turn for you, Kyle?
Probably when I came back, but more so I'd say this summer. In the spring a little bit. I think going through spring ball, I was dealing with a lot academically, so it wasn't like the best time for me. Trying to take 18 credits to finish out, but I think this summer has been huge for me personally. Growing in that department, being more confident in myself, getting, a big thing is really physically myself developing in the weight room, and just kind of the respect I've started to receive, from my peers, just from the experience I've been through. And I'd say that's just going to help carry through the season for me.
All right, I know you got some fancy major, and I know you got a 4-point whatever, because you always have. But when this is over, how in the world are you going to walk away from football, and is coaching in your future?
Coaching is out of my future. I'll be happy to walk away. Like I said, I was content if I didn't play last year, and I was content not playing in the NFL if I didn't get this year back. But I'm going to ride this out. I love this game very much. It's done very great things for me. It's introduced me to a lot of great people in my life. It's really gonna shape my life for the entire future. But I will be happy when that day comes when I walk away. But I'm still gonna give my all every single day to the sport, and I'll be very happy to continue to do that.
We're gonna hold you to this, bro. It's getting recorded.
Yeah, I'm not coaching.
Dude, I don't blame you.
On the sidelines of Massillon at all.
Hey,
will you be up in the lot with us, maybe?
Yeah, come to the lot with us. We get to the games, we just don't see the plays.
Yeah, I probably need a couple tailgates in my future at some point.
Well, you know what? No, this is a cool thing where you're at, man. You don't have to answer that right now, and it doesn't live life to what it is right now. And don't get caught up in that. And if you do change your mind 10 years from now, 5 years from now, you have that right. I think if anything, you're teaching us and you're teaching everyone that's listening to you, trying to map out the next 6 months, the next 6 years of your life usually is the dumbest thing to do, rather than just make the most of the moment that you have, right?
Right, exactly. That's what I've learned.
Well, it's such a what have you done for me lately or what can I do tomorrow society. And for you to stick with it is awesome. And for you to have the success I've had. I mean, I've had a couple White Claws, Kyle, so I'm not going to cry, but I'm so happy for you, and you know that.
We are.
Parting words. To the 15-year-old quarterback that thinks he wants to do this, to the 18-year-old quarterback that's not getting the offers, that has to choose JUCO or D3 or whatever it may be, walk on somewhere. Kyle Kempt, old and wise and well-traveled. What do you say to those kids?
I'd say it's never going to go the way you think it is, but stick to it. And at the end of the day, football is going to pay off. It may not pay off for you on the field, but it will pay off for you in the real world. Trust me when I say that.
Well, he knows. He's seen
Kyle
some
don't
stuff.
lie. Kyle don't lie.
Kyle don't lie, just like Dre don't lie. Hey, we appreciate you guys listening. If you're new here, thanks for coming. We appreciate Kyle for coming. And with the 6th pick in the 2019 Cleveland draft, the Cleveland Browns select Kyle Kempt. We'll talk to you then.
No, they won't. He's too tall. He's way
He
too,
is too tall.
He's too tall. Hey, Kyle, we appreciate it, brother. Thank you. I know this is a big part of your year. Thank you for taking the time out. We're big fans, and you know you got 2 fat kids in Akron rooting for 2 fat. We're not kids no more. 2 fat old men rooting for you in Akron, no matter what happens, man.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, buddy. We'll be rooting for you. Hey, guys, thanks for listening.
Okay.
Thanks to Scene, to Honeymoon,
White Claw,
to American Fireworks, and to Kyle Kempt.
Hey, man.
For Andre and Zach, we'll see you next time.
People don't Konnichiwa, Iowa State. We got more teams that people don't understand why we wear their gear and do everything else.
We do. Yeah, Kyle needs some gear. I'll send you my address. Thanks for coming, buddy.
Thanks.